What is elk hunting? It's calling that big old bull up close. It's hunting with your buddy. And sometimes it's calling to a crowd. It's getting that bull that's in the shadows. Sometimes it's that old bull that's in the thick brush and you'll wonder if you'll ever get a shot. It could be wondering why your dang mule don't want to get up. Or it could be finding out who really controls that herd and who's the boss. It might even be seeing that bull of a lifetime push his way through the thick brush coming to you. Or it could be a bull out in the open, bugling his way to you, only to find out that there's a booger man. Or it could be taking a guy on his very first elk kill. It might be seeing that great big bull out in the opening, calling him to you, but knowing you'll probably never have a shot at him.
Elk hunting's one thing, elk calling that's another. Aggressive elk calling, that's something entirely different. I'm Wayne Carlton, and on this video we're going to show you where the fighting cow call actually came from, how effective it can be on calling big bulls, and how to use the calls, and we're going to show you what aggression and elk calling is all about. This is 4 years of hunting. It should be good. Get ready.
You know, I think a good place to start aggressive elk calling is with the first bull that I ever called in using that technique. It was the last day of archery season in Colorado. We're up between 10,000 and 11,000 feet. The bulls simply won't answer to a cow call using a diaphragm, and they're not responsive to a bugle. But as soon as I hit that high-pitched cow call, then things started happening. Before I started using that call, you couldn't get an elk to bugle. For 2.5 hours, you couldn't get an elk to bugle. And from the point in time that I started using that high-pitched cow call, the same sound that I heard cows make when they were fighting, in an hour and a half, I had called 6 bulls in. One of which my son Mark was able to get. You know, when you hear cows call and they're out in the woods and they're just trying to find one another, or they're trying to look for you, that communication is different. It's almost like a question. But when cows fight and they paw at each other and they make those cow calls at that point in time, then it's a it's got a lot of movement in that call. And creating those high-pitched sounds, that seems to really stimulate the bulls during the rut. And no, we're not trying to call the cows in, we're trying to call the bulls in using that technique. And once you learn how to use the timing, and play the tune that that bull wants to hear, that's when you start calling them in close. I used a lot of different sounds on one bull, sometimes 3 or 4 different sounds. I want to do whatever it takes to make those elk get close. Of course, whenever they know there's a crowd around, they're not going to stay for pictures. Now, if you've never been out in the woods, and if you've never tried these high-pitched calls, it's going to be hard for you to believe that they really work the way they do.
What kind of bull is that coming down?
But there's a lot of elk in this canyon. And we're going to try to go after one bull, the bull that sounds the biggest. And the best technique that I have found is if there's a bull bugling and he sounds like the one that you want, then you go to him and you pass up everything else that comes to you. Using the techniques that I'm talking about, it's real easy to call in the satellite bulls because they're lonesome, they want in on the action, but it's a little harder to get the big bulls in. So when you want to get that big bull, you have to pass up the smaller bulls. That bull was chuckling, but as soon as he got done, I wanted to hit him with a call. When you look up on the hillside, we see elk running down towards us. They're kind of jumping around. I'm trying to create as much excitement as I can simply by calling. There's a lot of bulls in this canyon, so what you have to do is pay attention to the one you're calling to, but also be aware on what may be coming in without saying anything. Quite often when you're using this high-pitched cow calling technique, and when you're creating as much excitement as I'm trying to create, then the cows will come, sometimes before the bulls, sometimes they all come together. And you see that bull, he's just slipping through the trees. Now, even though that's a pretty nice looking bull, he's not the herd bull. He's one of the satellite bulls. I always try to get on the same elevation with the elk I'm calling to, but in using this real aggressive calling technique, I've had them come up the hill and come down the hill. And as you can see, that bull got pretty close. And he's getting a little closer. When you get a bull in like that, you don't want to take him. Just play with him by calling. You'll learn an awful lot about the critters that you're hunting simply by being close to them. When you're calling, that's a good way to be close.
With all the bulls
Yeah, they sure like that high-pitched call. Remember I said always be looking out for one coming to you. Don't just pay attention to the one you're calling to. You got to be looking. This bull's getting closer and closer, so we're just going to have to sit down right where we're at. He's not very far away. I use the cow call, the diaphragm cow call. And now I'm bugling. Using the mega grunt tube. But there's still no answer. So I'm not really sure where he's at. I don't know if he's still coming or if he's going. So you try this high-pitched cow call. And that'll tell you right quick what he's doing. He's getting closer and closer. Again, he's a nice bull, but he's not the one we're after, so I'm just kind of playing with him. And unless you've been out in the woods, it's hard to believe the reaction of those elk to that call. And even when you're there, sometimes you still can't believe it. Well, let's go down to northern New Mexico, and this is in September, and we're actually trying to call a bear in, but we see the elk up on a ridge, and I start calling. Again, using those high-pitched calls, and the elk start coming. Now again, these are nice bulls, especially if you're a bow hunter. These are real nice bulls. But if you're after that great big herd bull, these are the kind of bulls you have to pass up. They're just slipping in. They're trying to see who's making all that commotion. And when they add the bugles and the chuckles to the cow calls that you're doing, all that does is add fuel to the fire. And sometimes that's what it takes to get that big bull going. It's a lot of excitement, and that's what I'm trying to create. As much excitement as possible, simply by calling, raking trees, and getting the other animals to answer back. Again, it adds fuel to the fire. And they'll sure pinpoint you whenever you keep calling, and they're right in front of you. They know exactly where you're at. Anything that you can do in calling using this aggressive type call to make the bulls get like that, your chances increase in getting that animal in. he's looking at his buddy. He says, I'll take you on. But again, the satellite bulls are easy to call in. The herd bulls, the bigger bulls like this, they'll come a distance, but this is wide open country. Again, we're up in northern New Mexico hunting with George Tallman, U.S. Outfitters. And we saw a lot of bulls like this, but it was open country, and it's hard to get close enough to put the pressure on that bull to get him to come in. And when you have a situation like that, it's real important that you time the calls to what the bull's doing. If you have the advantage of seeing that animal, then you call to him in reference to what he's doing. Just don't call at random. Try to time your calls to something he's doing. This bull right here is a good example of what I'm talking about. We snuck up on that bull. Got about, I'd say 150, 200 yards. Let him bugle on his own. And while he bugled, I just hit him with that high-pitched call. Now just watch and you'll see how I call and how the bull responds as he comes in. The best rule of thumb is when an animal's coming towards you, don't call or call very little, just enough to keep him coming. Now I'm hunting with Wayne Pearson here from the Ultimate Outdoors, and Wayne has pulled just at the right time because the bull is behind the vegetation, he's coming around. But down in that part of the country, it's hard to be part of the vegetation, and when you're not part of the vegetation, they know you're a booger man and they'll see you. You know, so many people, when they go hunting, they restrict their time of hunting to early morning and late afternoon. Well, there's a couple of episodes here that I want to show you that shows you that when you hunt all during the day, if you'll go where the elk are at the time of day that you are hunting, then you can still use those same calling techniques to get the elk in. These elk are way down in that oak brush. They were feeding in the aspen, but now during the daytime they get in this thick brush. And that thick brush, if you want to hunt elk during the day, that's where you got to get. Boy, they're right there. You can hear them. The limbs are breaking. And they're right on top of us. But again, it's thick brush, so that's where the calling really pays off, is you have to use those calls to make a shot for yourself. Because if you get quiet, when they get that close, that's when everything dies down, you don't get a shot. But now we're not on the outside of that brush, we're right in the brush. We're underneath a canopy. And those elk are just slipping in, and they're trying to see who's making all that fuss.
That one just wasn't big enough. Can you folks believe all the elk that is in this country? And there's more coming.
Now this is like 1 o'clock during the day. It's hot. The sun is real bright. You can see that from looking at the foliage. But you just slip through that stuff, and finally that bull's going to slip back to you. In other words, you've created enough excitement that you got him up out of his bed, and he's going to come and see what's going on. when you can't see the elk, you have no idea what they're doing, whether they're laying down, standing up, raking a tree, or whatever. So since you can't see them, you have to assume that you have to stimulate them, and that's where the calls and walking and moving gets you in position for that shot. There's one thing about trying to hunt in this real thick stuff, and that is you have to be aware of hitting those limbs like I just did.
Cows make a lot of different sounds, and if you can learn to imitate those sounds, and if you can create the reaction that you want to create at the time you're trying to call, well then that's when you start calling some good bulls in. For instance, a generic cow call, one that you hear a lot of, is something like this. But if that cow is lost and is trying to get back to the herd, it's more of a desperate sound like this. But now you take those same cow sounds and put some movement in them, like where the cows are fighting with each other. That's what I'm finding out is really effective in calling bulls in. Now if you're using a diaphragm, it's like this. And you notice I'm bobbing my head, I'm kind of shaking my chest. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create some action in that call. A diaphragm does it pretty good, and you don't have to use your hands, but the call that does it the best is a little plastic reed cow call. We call it the fighting cow call because that's where I learned the technique from, is just watching cows fight and listening to what they're doing, and then trying to imitate that during the rut when I'm trying to call a good bull in. So to use this call, and the sound that you'll hear how it sounds a lot different than a diaphragm, the way you use it is you're biting down the tip of the reed about 3/8 of an inch in from the end of it. You're biting in on that. You want a high pitch E sound, and then from that point you can take that call anywhere you want to go, like this. Now, I'm sure you haven't probably tried that out in the woods. It's hard to get across to people, hey, this really works, but I hope by the scenes that you've seen in this video that it does show you that it does work. It's a call that you have to practice. It's not something you're just going to pick up and do it, but again, let me show you. Okay, what I want you to do is to bite right at the tip of this, about 3/8 of an inch from the end of it, put your teeth right across there, and you press down. And then as you blow the air through it, you'll get that high-pitched sound. If you don't get a sound, you're pressing too hard. So start backing off until you get that high-pitched E sound. After that, you can take that call and you can lighten up on the reed, take a little pressure off of it, and get that real nasal quality, that sort of thing. Again, putting it in your mouth, this is the way it's going to sound. Again, I'm starting off with that high pitch. That's what I want to start with. You don't want to start from low pitch and then go up. You want to start with the high pitch to get that sound. And you'll also notice I'm using my hand to give that sound a different reflection. I'm trying to make that thing change the tone as it's coming out of the call. Put some life in the call, put some action in it, and that's when you start getting the action from the bulls.
When you're elk hunting, quite often a bull will bugle from a long ways away. And at that point in time, what I try to do is use my binoculars to see which direction the wind is blowing to where I think the elk's at. In other words, you get fooled. Sometimes the wind's blowing in one direction where you're at, but then when you get to where the elk is at, the wind's blowing just the opposite, and that will really mess your hunt up in a hurry. So I try to be patient enough. I try to look at the vegetation to see what the wind's doing, realizing that it can change at any time, but I'm really trying to play that wind. Now, the closer I get to where I think the elk are at, more I slow down.
Where's our bull?
We got up to where the elk was at, and lo and behold, they had come down to where we were at. Again, now we're hunting that thick oak brush. We've got aspen trees around us, and we got black timber. But there's a lot of good grass underneath this oak brush. It's late in the afternoon. Now hear that? That's glunking. Whenever elk are glunking, usually there's cows right with them. And I want him to know that I'm another cow. I'm a hot cow. I got a high-pitched call, and I want that bull to come and see me. This bull actually came in 3 times. But I couldn't get a shot, not until now. And when you're hunting thick cover like this, you have to pick the place that you're going to take your shot. There he stops, I don't have a shot. But as he starts to move, then I know I can get in there and get him. And at 15 yards, it doesn't take long for that arrow to get there. Now you notice we're bugling as soon as I shoot the elk. If you'll bugle or do a real high-pitched cow call as soon as you shoot, quite often those elk will quit running, and it'll calm them down. It saves a long tracking job at times.
Looked like a good hit. Looks like it right where it's supposed to go.
Yeah, watch him come right up there.
Not yet.
How big? How big? You know, we let that bull go for about 30, 40 minutes, but by calling, I actually heard the animal fall down, so I knew he couldn't be too far away. And when you know the direction they went, it's easier to track.
Well, that's a dandy. Jay, that is my best bull right there. Hey, look at that rat. Boy, he is heavy, isn't he? That thing. Man. Gee, Christmas. Oh. Look at that thing. Look at them dagger ties. You know, this is a heck of a dang bull, but he ain't the big one. The big one was back over there bugling. Yeah. But I tell you, just 2 days of season left, and haven't passed them other ones up.
All right, buddy.
Well, yeah, I tell you what.
Oh, you made a nice shot on it.
You have got a great place here to hunt.
In addition to the fighting cow call, some calls that we've come up with over the last couple of years is that what we call our Pro Slim. We've taken half the thickness of the frame out, which means that diaphragm is more comfortable up in the roof of your mouth, plus the latex is laying flat against your tongue, so you don't have to push your tongue past the frame to get on the latex to make this thing whistle. Now when you're doing that, it's a lot more comfortable, it's a little easier to blow. Now something else that we've added that I have found that's really helpful out in the woods, we take our normal grunt tube and blow through it. Makes a pretty good sounding bugle, but just add this megaphone to the end of it, it just slips right inside the grunt tube. Now what that does, what the megaphone does, it gives that call a little deeper sound, a richer sound, kind of like a more original sound,
So when you're working a big bull, sometimes that's what they want to hear. They don't want to hear that satellite bull. They're trying to hear a big bull. Now, a trick that I've learned in using this call, instead of blowing through this end when the bull starts coming in and you're trying to make him think you're somewhere else, just turn that sucker around and blow through the big end. It kind of really throws that sound around so that animal never knows exactly where you're at. Just kind of a little tip, something you learn out in the woods. You know, all the calling that you can learn how to do, it really won't help you if the vegetation isn't right, if the terrain isn't right for what you're trying to do. In this particular case, even though we can see the elk through the trees,
there's about 4 bulls in here, but we can't get close enough to any of them suckers to get them in. They all got cows. This is about the first week of archery season in Colorado. If we could just get close enough to put pressure on them, we'd have a better chance, but doing it like this is real difficult. All we can do is keep trying.
it's one of those deals. The elk's there. You know it's going to be hard to get him, but you keep trying and hoping maybe you'll get lucky. But to make aggressive elk calling and using the fighting cow call and raking trees and real heavy bugles to make all that work, it works a lot better when you've got the vegetation thick enough on the ground that allows you to slip in and get right in the back pocket of that bull you're after. You know, it's something to see a great big old bull that's about 200 yards away and it's just no way to get any closer. So I just lay every call on him I can to try to get him aggravated enough that maybe, just maybe, he'll come over. And if you do have to move on an animal, if you are trying to get closer, look at their head, and if it's down, that's when you want to move, but you want to move extremely slow. And then when you set up, you want to set up next to an object, a tree or brush or something. And if I see a bull like this raking a tree, I don't give him the option of doing it in peace and quiet. I'm going to bugle at him. I'm going to cow call to him. I'm going to do anything I can to get that sucker cranked up. As you can see, this is a good bull. But he's still too far away to do any good. But at least he is moving in my direction. And we may just get lucky. There's only one problem when you're trying to do all this calling with aggressive style. Sometimes the little guys want to come in and watch what's going on. And when they point you like a bird dog, and that big bull walks in behind them, you can forget it. You're not going to get that bull. To make an aggressive elk calling work, you got to have the vegetation that you can work through to get close. And this country here is about as thick as you want to get. We got black timber on the hillside, oak brush in the bottom, and a bull that only bugles once or twice. But see, it's really thick here, so we can kind of move our way around, pick our way. and just slip up. When you're slipping up and the bull's not bugling very much, sometimes that indicates he's a small bull. Maybe it's a big bull that just doesn't want to work too good. But you really have to be careful when you got a bull going like that he doesn't walk to you while you're walking to him. So even though you're walking down these trails, you really have to use your stalking skills to slip in there and do it quietly. Don't make a lot of noise. And try to spot that bull before he spots you. And Whit spotted the bull. I couldn't see him, but you can see him just in the bottom right-hand corner of the picture. His bull's just slipping up, not saying a word. On this entire call-in sequence, this bull only bugled twice, and so far away that you couldn't hear him over the microphone that's on the camera. And again, now it's thick enough that the bull's moving in. Whit's able to pull and hold until he gets a shot. And there's the shot. Looks to me like you made a perfect hit. And after waiting about 30 minutes, and again, we heard the bull go down. He went down not too far from where he was shot. But we probably waited between 30 and 45 minutes because we didn't want to take a chance. As you can see down through that vegetation, this is a deep canyon. And we don't want that bull to get up and to go. We want him to stay right where he's at. We know he can't be far. There he is. I could just see his antlers. And Whit's just a little bit lower in the vegetation. He couldn't see it.
Thank you. What, dang?
That's great.
Well, after all the dang trial and errors we've had with other people, I am glad to see that. Wow.
It's been a long time.
He came up fast. He didn't bugle very much, did he? Just
No.
twice?
2 or 3 times.
And then he slipped to us.
First bull.
He made a good hit. He didn't go, but he didn't go, what, 80 yards, 90 yards from where you hit him?
That's about it.
Came right down through there.
You know, anytime you can take somebody on their first elk kill, somebody that enjoys elk woods and elk hunting like old Whit Stephen does from Arkansas, anytime you can be involved in that, it's something you don't forget, and you really don't forget packing this meat out.
Folks, you ain't never packed no elk out. You ain't had no fun out here in the Rockies. Dang it, I wish I had my back frame.
Of course, I try to give Whit the biggest piece since he's younger than I am.
I wish I had the strength I had 20 years ago. But you know, I ain't been no place elk hunting.
It was easy.
It was easy. I mean, they're big, they're heavy, and I don't care where you kill them at, you still got to pick them puppies up and put them somewhere. But this is a lot easier than what it could have been down one of them canyons. If we'd down the canyon, we'd have
We'd
to
have
go
wounded him, he'd have gone.
Oh, that's why I didn't want to see him get up and go. So he went down, and you hit him right where he's supposed to. Sucker went down within 100 yards, and we didn't have to train. We walked right to him, you know. But if he went down that canyon, if you made a bad hit, or if we started chasing him, he went down there, we'd be going back to get the mules.
You know, anytime that you're using these calling techniques, aggressive calling techniques, high-pitched sounds, not only does it stimulate the animals that you're calling like elk or whatever, but it also stimulates predators, in this case, big predators. So when you're out trying to create all this excitement, beware that mountain lion may be coming in, or bears could be coming in. Animals that are big enough predators, if they come in, they can do you some harm. But again, you're creating a lot of excitement in the woods, so be ready for anything. With all the traveling I do and all the seminars I do, some of the most frequent asked questions are, what equipment do you use and why do you use it? So I just thought I'd take the time now to explain why I use what I use. To start with, I use a caliper release from Scott. And the reason I went to a release, I used to shoot fingers. The reason I went to a release, simply this: you have a consistent shot time after time, no matter whether you're cold or hot. Now the bow I use is the Jennings, a Speed Star, just came out in '95. The reason I like this, when you're in a hunting situation, sometimes you get all excited and you kind of hold the bow a little bit too tight. Well, it has a nice small handle. That way when your adrenaline's pumping, you're not over-torquing that bow. So you get that out of it by having the handle. The other reason I like it, it's light, plus it shoots real fast. I'm getting about 300 feet a second when I'm shooting a carbon aluminum with a 125 Vortex on the end of it. Now the reason I went to carbon aluminums, these are the ACCs. I'm shooting the 371s. I was shooting a 2413 before. They're a little too fat to get the penetration I wanted through that animal, especially when you're shooting big game like elk. So I went to these. They're smaller. I usually get complete penetration with them. And the reason I like the Vortex is simply this: when you shoot it, you don't have any planing. It shoots right where your field point does. When it hits, it opens up and you get a cut like that. When you get a cut like that going through an animal, you're going to get a good blood trail, and you're going to, more times than not, you're going to find that animal you shot. Now, one thing I don't want to leave out is the sight. I shoot a Sight Master, not because I can move it up and down out in the woods, because I don't do that. What I do is I'll sight this thing in for 30 yards. I know what my bow does at 40 yards. I know what it does at 10 and 20. I sight it in for 30, and I allow for the different distances. I don't want to have to worry about multi-pins when that animal comes in. I want to concentrate on the animal where I want to shoot him, and I don't want to have to worry about a bunch of pins sticking out there in front of me. That's why I use a one-pin setup. Some of the things I use, the reason I use them is because they work for me out in the woods, and they have for a long time. Let's go back to the woods of New Mexico, northern New Mexico, and hunt with George Tallman. Actually, I'm with his guide, Andy, and I tell you, a good guide is worth his weight in gold, because Andy knew where the bulls was at. Of course, there's only one problem here: the bulls don't want to come to us. So we've got to take a chance here and try to go to the bulls. So we went out of the thick cover, and now we're going into the open part. Once we get back in the shadows like we are here, we kind of blend in a little bit with the surrounding instead of being like a sore thumb out in the sunlight. When you're doing something like this, try to figure out where the bull will feel comfortable coming in. And if you think you'll feel good about coming into this spot, then go ahead and set up. And when I set up, I try to get next to a tree or a brush or something, anything that's going to break up my body outline. And only then do I really get serious and try to whine and dine that bull on in. One of the things that I have noticed is that when a bull starts getting close, he gets quieter and quieter. Sometimes they bugle a lot, but I'd say 9% of the time when that bull starts slipping in like this, he's going to be looking, he's going to be listening, he's going to be trying to spot you before you spot him. Now if you set up, then you get to watch him come instead of him watching you come. See, I'm just throwing that sound around. I'm trying to make him try to figure out where I'm at. See, we got this open country, and I can't get any closer to him. So I'm just trying to do enough calling to try to get that bull to come on in and give me a shot. Actually, he's not too far away, but every time he stops, there's always a tree in the way. And he's interested, but he just doesn't want to come all the way. Just like one of those hide and seek deals. I'm gonna hide from you and look for you. So you just kind of keep throwing those calls. First he was to our right, now he's going to our left. If you look at that grass, that's the way the wind's blowing. And he's probably going to try to come around and get my wind. I say I used the diaphragm cow call there. He looked back at me, but he wants to walk away. Let's see what that high pitch does. He's much more reactive to that. He bugled to me, so I just give it right back to him. He's still just easing off to our left. I still don't have a shot, so the only option you got is to keep calling. He's going in the right direction now. He's heading our way. Just so you know, when you're looking at this, we've shortened this up by a bunch. We actually had almost 14 minutes of video footage of this elk coming in, going out, coming in and going out, until finally he came close enough that I could get a shot. And a lot of it had to do with that high pitch cow call. I need for him to take about one more step. And that's a step I need right there. That's 42 yards. That's about the furthest I'll shoot an elk. Open country, but I had a good shot. Nothing between me and the bull. It looks like I made a pretty good hit on it.
Can you see it? Yeah, it looks like a good hit. I almost thought it went over him, but it may have just been the arc of the arrow. Yeah, no, it looks like you got him. Look like a good hit. Just wait. Keep him a while. Then we'll go check it out. I tell you, there were some other bulls bugling. Yeah. You know, but I messed up on that big one this morning. I missed him. And this one was so close. Yeah, this one came right over. He was closer over there, but I had trees in the way. And then when he came back over here trying to get her wind, yeah, I see the way. It was just nothing between us. Yeah.
Now, when we first started trailing him, there was hardly any blood. Then about 30 yards, it started to be quite a bit. And from that point on, it was almost a solid trail. Then you slip up and you realize you don't need a second arrow. It's good country, open country. You get to see them.
Boy, that was some good calling you did back there, Wayne. He's been raking in trees. Yeah. Look at that. Big time. But you know, that's a difference. It takes more than one fishing plug, sometimes called an elk in. You know, because when you go fishing, you take more than one plug.
That's right.
And I tried that diaphragm on him, and it did okay, but he started leaving, and every time I hit that cow call, that plastic reed, here he comes.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that he turned around and came right back to us.
Anytime you think that the bull is herding the cows up and running them off, or you can't make them come back to you, usually it's that dominant cow. She doesn't want to hear what you got to say, or she spotted you and she's taking off and everybody's going with her. And you get them to bugle to you, you can get them kind of look around, but it's hard to get them back. But other than that, I think the biggest thing that keeps people from getting that animal, especially when you're elk hunting, is the persistence and the determination to go down in that canyon, to go to that next hill, to go up to that ridge, and to know they're on the other side. A lot of folks, when they're out there hunting, they just give up right during the middle of the hunt. When you're elk hunting, you better be tough, and you gotta think tough. Well, all the techniques and ideas that we brought to you in this video, we brought to you from being out in the wild and working with elk. I kind of get a kick out of some of the eastern call manufacturers coming across like they got all the answers. You know, you got to kind of wonder, do they even know the questions? You know, I think the best way to get good bulls in, again, is to be able to get close to them. This bull was right over a hill, so we just slipped up as close as we could get and started doing those calls. And here he comes. Of course, every bull thinks he's the biggest, baddest hombre there. And when they come in, they take it out on some poor little old pine tree that wasn't bothering anybody. But if you're a hunter and you don't have that shot, you could take a side step and get a shot, or you could do some calls away from the bull, make him think you're somewhere else, and get him to come even closer. We're just playing with this bull right here. I've learned one thing about elk hunting, though. When you're close enough to see slobber dripping out of their mouth, they're close enough to shoot, because they ain't going to stay there forever. You better get her done. I think elk hunting and elk country is not complete unless you got a couple of good saddle mules. And I think some of the best times I've ever had is just taking the mules, take one for packing, one for riding, and just go through the woods, especially if you've done your scouting ahead of time, you know where the elk's at. Just try to use those mules to get over there. The elk don't know you're coming, it's low impact, they don't hear a vehicle, especially when the colors are changing. Boy, it doesn't get much better than being out in the woods this time of year. Now, you can bugle off your mule while you're going. I will say that if an elk starts coming in, I try to tie them mules up as quick as I could and get away from them, because my mules know how to chuckle, but they ain't got that bugle down. So what I like to do is try to get close to the area I want to hunt, and get in there and tie them up, and then slip over to the part of the country that you're trying to call that elk in. On this particular bull, I think I was on him 3 or 4 times. But when he came in the first time, the cows messed us up. And then I tried to get closer to him, and I never could get close enough to get a shot, and had actually given up and was going back to the mules, and I heard him bugle. So I says, I'm going to try this bull one more time. And again, we're hunting some pretty thick country, but where I live in Colorado, sometimes that's where the good bulls are at. So that's where I'm at. I know he's there. I can hear the limbs cracking, then all of a sudden I see his antlers. And 2 cows had already come by, so I had a good idea that he was going to follow them. But once he got that close, I could see some more cows behind him. So now it's that typical standoff. Who's going to win this? He's trying to see me. I can see him, but I don't have a shot. One of the techniques I like when they're this close is don't say anything. Let them look for you. And sometimes they'll turn around real slow and it'll give you a shot. So I'm trying to let him turn. And when he turns, I'm going to go to full draw. I really have to be careful about what I'm shooting through here so I don't hit something. And as he turns, the only problem is he turns too fast, and I couldn't get a good line on him to see where I wanted to shoot. But if you know how to use a diaphragm call and bugle, then you have a second opportunity. Looks like I got a good hit. 15 minutes till 6. The skies are threatening. It's the 6 point. We started chasing him 2 hours ago. Well, anytime you got a blood trail like this, it's good. I got some blood right here. Usually you don't get quite so much so fast. But I'm shooting a vortex and ACCs, carbons, penetrated all the way through him, and I heard him groaning over there. So, as much blood as he is here, he ought to be down. Boy, I sure hope so. He's a nice bull. There he is, laying right over there. I'm going to slip up, make sure that he's dead. I don't want him to get up and run off. Well, if you've ever done much hunting at all, whenever you see that animal, and you know that he's down, and there's a good chance he ain't gonna get up and run off, you could say the pressure's off. But at the same time, you just don't want to run up there. You want to be a little careful. He's down. He's down for good.
Worked that sucker for 2 or 3 hours. Dang. A darn 5 or 6, you know? I don't really care. There's only about 4 days left of archery season in Colorado. The colors are changing. The elk are bugling. It's not too hot. And we had the privilege of working this bull 4 or 5 times. I didn't keep track, but we were on him and off of him, on him and off of him. And we were going back to the mules to go back to the truck, and he made the mistake of bugling. We slipped up on him one more time, started using that little old high-pitched cow call,
and I mean, that sucker, the cows came first and he followed them, and I could hear him coming through the woods. But just this little thing right here, that did the tide, that turned the trick. That was a better fishing plug. Mercy, isn't that pretty? Dang, he's pretty. 5 or 6. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed it. This has been one heck of a hunt. We'll catch you next time.
Good, Gene. Come on, Tom.
Elk hunting just got a little more exciting with the aggressive elk calls. Be sure to learn how to use that fighting cow call. And until next time, this is Wayne Carlton. For more information on Wayne Carlton's calls or our videos, call 1-800-356-9692. If you love elk and elk hunting and elk habitat as much as I do, you can do your part to protect that by joining the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. Call 1-800-CALL-ELK.